Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Newsgram. Let's begin our adventure today in 19th century Spain. It was a romantic time, a time when corsets were so tight they could squeeze the secrets out of you, and when skirts were so voluminous they had a life of their own. Can you hear them now, rustling and bustling down the cobblestone streets, echoing with the passionate rhythms of flamenco guitars? This was a time when gentlemen peacocked around town in their well-tailored three-piece suits, and their top hats, of course. The air was filled with excitement. Spain was a tapestry of vibrant colors, rich traditions, and an irresistible zest for life. It was also a time when religion, power, and family authority were all concentrated in the hands of men. A time governed by rigid patriarchal structure, when men held sway over not just wealth and political authority, but they also dictated the upbringing of their children. And in our adventure today, it was a time when all this power and influence in the hands of some bad men was a recipe for disaster. And for Amalia, that is exactly what happened.
It's very real to life. It's full of tragedy, but it's all the feels. You got love and companionship, and then you have deception and intrigue and even murder. But that's what life is, right? That's what this is, a roller coaster ride for sure.
Riding that roller coaster is our protagonist. Her name is Amalia, and she's a 15-year-old girl, born in a patriarchal society to an abusive father who does the kind of things that make you glad this is not a real story. But at the same time, you're grateful for the page-turning narrative that is titled The Name I Choose by Holly Brough.
It was writing a screenplay for this movie that's in my head.
That's a great way to put it, because this book does read like a movie. It's amazing how quickly your mind will wash over the words while you take in the story and the characters. Here's the premise.
About a young girl who doesn't know her origin, doesn't understand where she comes from, especially when she's sold into servitude by her father, who she believed to be her champion in this horrible life she's had to live for 15 years. So when she's 15, she's sent to an abusive master's household to be a servant. And she doesn't realize that she's more of a slave than a servant until about a month later, when she isn't getting any paychecks. Everybody else is getting paid on Saturday morning. They get their paychecks, and she waits and she listens and again doesn't get her paycheck. So she goes to the housekeeper and says, "Can you tell me why this is happening?" And she said, "Well, I've wondered the same thing, and I've asked, and I understand that your family got a large parcel of land and a big home, and so you've been paid for. I'm sorry, you're at the mercy of the Trudeaus. You're here forever." And well, that was a real blow for her because she's miserable in this household. So
she had to find a way to come to terms with all that, and she did that by first swallowing the bitter pill that is her new life, and then trying to live it the best way she could, which for us means more adventure. So she falls in love with the Duke of Cadiz, a fellow foodie.
He seduces her with yummy foods, which is something that she loves. She loves food. She's a chef herself because she's been cooking for her family for 8 years. And he's also a food connoisseur, so that's something that they had in common. And he would bring her these delicious treats to taste and whatever.
I just love this book's visuals. You can just see the foods and feel the romance in your mind's eye while experiencing this roller coaster of a plot going up and down again and again.
They had a short love affair, and then he left her pregnant.
Poor Amalia is sold off and abused. She finds love and connection, only to be left pregnant and wanting. Forced then to find a way to deal with her newest of circumstances, her master and her unborn child.
And so she fled.
Of course she did. To demonstrate how that played out, we asked Holly to read an excerpt from her book.
So as instructed, Amalia stuck to the trees, keeping in their shadows on the outskirts of Aguilas. But the trees spread farther and farther apart as houses clustered closer together, and the thought of Abuela peering down at Amalia from the second floor of her home and knowing someone else could be doing the same thing frightened her. Once she entered town, the streets narrowed and visibility beyond the next bend became impossible. Horror struck her when she came face to face with herself at the end of an alley. Reward for the information about this woman, who goes by the name of Amalia Maritimo. Dark hair, green eyes, short in stature and slender. Last seen wearing the uniform of a housemaid. She is in the possession of precious emerald jewelry belonging to the Trudeau family. Report any information to the civil guard. Amalia's heart pounded. Her feet felt numb. She rushed through the streets, catching only brief glimpses of the next turn. Coming to a high wall and nowhere to go, Amalia turned, praying no one would stop her. Few people looked up from their conversations, and she kept her eyes averted. Peeking over her shoulder to make sure no one was following her, she took a left and barreled into something solid but soft. She yelped in surprise. Strong hands set her right. She made eye contact with a short, stout man, possibly in his late 20s, dressed in military uniform, his soft brown eyes wide with surprise. Not a moment later, a taller gentleman appeared to her side, taking her elbow and turning her so her back faced the open plaza and any curious bystanders. Out in the harbor sat the most beautiful ship she'd ever imagined. He wrapped his cape around her shoulders. "Be gentle, Hastings," the shorter gentleman said in English. "I was very gentle. You help her then." The taller officer walked a short distance away, but his hawk-eye-like eyes canvassed the area. They wore uniforms, complete with navy tails and gold tassels on their shoulders. Could these officers be the ones I overheard on the road to Aguilas, or the ones Abuela told me about? Uncertain why the handsome officer abruptly walked away, Amalia flashed her prettiest smile at the other gentleman and spoke slowly in Spanish. "Pardon me, is this your ship?" She prayed he understood her. He removed his hat and replied in near-perfect Spanish, "Buenos tardes, señorita. Allow me to introduce us. I am Commander Gilbert Channing, and this is Captain Joshua Hastings. We are at your service." The commander lowered over her hand and kissed it. Captain Joshua Hastings. The captain quickly glanced at Amalia, then looked away. "Hastings?" He rolled his eyes and mustered a stiff bow. "Buenos tardes." Amalia's face brightened when she recognized his voice. As a result, Captain Hastings' mouth fell open, and she had to cover her own to hide a laugh at his reaction. He adjusted his broad shoulders, and her eyes followed their taper down to a narrow waist accentuated by an ornate belt. His crisp uniform emphasized his muscular frame, making Amalia's commitment to stay away from men teeter dangerously. His impeccable physique was as mesmerizing to her as her smile seemed to be to him. "And you are?" Commander Channing said. Pulling her eyes away from the captain, she replied, "Oh, si, pardon me. I am, I apologize. I was distracted. My name is Leah Tavio." A lopsided smile and raised eyebrows revealed Captain Hastings' amusement at her stutter. "Do they notice my blunder?" You are in luck, Señorita Tavio. This is our ship," Commander Channing said. "I would like to purchase a ticket, por favor." "When will you be casting off?" she said, a little too eagerly. "Our ship is leaving in a few hours, but we don't often ferry civilians when delivering cargo and supplies. However," Channing looked at Hastings, who gave him a slight nod, "I believe we can make an exception this one time for a nominal fee." Amalia felt some nausea settling in. "Señorita, are you well?" Trying to act confident, her voice squeaked, "What is the price?" "You haven't asked where the ship is going," Captain Hastings said. Taken aback by Captain Joshua Hastings' perfect Spanish, as if it were his native tongue, Amalia stared at his polished teeth as his lips glided over them. She forgot to respond. "Oh dear, what was the question?" There was a chuckle from the commander. "Oh, where is it going?" Amalia quickly asked. Nerves on edge, she tried desperately not to look around for the civil guard. With one man in front of her and the other nearly behind her, they kept her hidden from suspicious eyes, but she felt anxiety at not being on the ship yet. Captain Hastings pulls Channing aside and says, "I think she's the one on the bulletin, and I think that she is Trudeau's victim. We need to help her."
And so goes another plot twist that I think you're going to really enjoy. I would love to share more detail, but where's the fun in giving away a brilliantly told story? I will say, there is a lot more going on than you might think or that I've so far led you to believe. This is not a typical romance novel. Far from it. Amalia is a strong, determined woman, and while the setting is in a different place and a different time, there are many aspects of her character that modern readers can definitely relate to. For example, there comes a time when she's asked to compromise herself by letting, quote, lonely strangers share her bed.
And she's like, I'm not going to give my child a whore for a mother. I'm not going to do that. And they threatened to send him to a workhouse. Well, she's not going to lose her child either, so she's formulated a plan.
So she concocted a scheme featuring a field of poppies and some opium-laced tea. Just the remedy for a weary traveler to transform their desires from passionate yearning to peaceful slumber. Intriguing and resourceful, and a real demonstration of the kind of woman Amalia had become.
That's kind of how Amalia is. She's very resourceful. I believe that women can be strong where they stand. They don't have to step into someone else's shoes to accomplish those goals. And names, I believe, are limiting. They keep us from becoming who we're meant to become. And I believe that we're here in this life, on this earth, at this time, to learn and grow and become more than we see ourselves today. And I believe that the only name, the only label that we can claim that is limitless and lasting, everyone can claim it, is child of God. And if we truly embrace that, then we know that our potential is limitless and it is lasting. It is a forever thing. We can continue to grow and become who we want to become. We can become the best of ourselves if we actually understand who we are at the core.
You're not what you do. You are not what you are called. You are what you are inside. Who can't relate to that? I told you there was more going on here than you might expect.
We know who we are by our actions when no one else is looking. So if we think about that, what am I doing when no one else is looking? That's who I am. And do I like that person? If I don't, I know that I can improve. I can change. I can become, because I'm a child of God.
The Name I Choose by Holly Brough is getting some great reviews, and I'm not at all surprised by that. It pulls you into its world with some captivating storytelling and a spot-on depiction of the historical era. The characters feel very real, the insight into 19th century culture is fascinating, and the plot will keep you guessing as the pages keep turning. It's available right now at all your favorite places to buy books, and I put links to some of them in the show's description for you. And that will do it for this edition of Newsgram from webtalkradio.com.